But this is a good one. I arrive in Amsterdam, and it doesn't take me long to realize. In Amsterdam, I know it's just shocking because I was about to turn 28, but I'd really never drunk a beer. I'd seen enough beers at the house that I didn't really, So I had my first beer in Amsterdam, and then somebody told me that thing I was smoking was heroin, and I thought, nah, I don't think so, I think so. I ended up getting on, again, it was run down in those days. I went and got on the Orient Express, and it was not fancy then. So I get on the Orient Express, and it goes all the way to Istanbul. Now, I'm telling you, I'm no fool. I had read all the National Geographics all my life, and I was really, really keen on all of that, but I still was naive about Istanbul. I thought I was going to arrive, and it's going to be sand dunes and camels and things. I don't know quite why. But remember, we're talking 1973 here. So I arrive in Istanbul, and I'm just enchanted by the mosques. If you've ever been there, there's the Blue Mosque, which is the most beautiful, sacred blue mosque. And I thought there is no way to show my respect for the Muslim religion than to seduce a man beneath the major minaret at the sacred Blue Mosque. I thought, God, that's being a team player. And there was nothing in any of the guidebooks to indicate that this was a violation of some, sort of strange protocol. So I had already learned at that point that I could seduce a corpse, probably. I just had gotten pretty good at it. I was making up for lost time. Remember, I went 4 years without letting anybody touch me. Give me a break here. So, everything went fine, and it was that cigarette moment, beneath the minarets. But unfortunately, when we were walking back, across, and I was going back to the youth hostel, he was so antisocial, he jumped me from behind with a knife and tried to kill me. In which case, then, I'm in a knife fight in Istanbul, and he's wrestling me down. And fortunately, the sidewalk across the street from the Blue Mosque was wooden, and the knife went into the wood, and I pinned him down. Well, under Turkish law, at that point, I don't know, because there was a language barrier, but the police came and so forth and so on, and they said, basically, what do you want to do with this guy? Do you want us to lock him up or whatever? And I said, look, I'm over here having my global adult adventures, and I showed up in Istanbul with a full set of teeth, and I've now my front tooth is knocked out. I want it replaced. I want to go to Athens. I think I need an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. So that it's arranged, and I'm taken to this dentist's office and everything, and they put me on opium. This is what they did. They put me on opium. So now I'm on opium, and it's going to be 3 days before the tooth is done. So I'm roaming around on opium, in Istanbul without a tooth. And then finally the time came to go and pick up the tooth. And I did, and I'm not making this up, I promise you. They brought out a pillow. They were so proud of it, like a padded box and everything to present it. They were so wonderful in Turkey. They were so ashamed that this had happened to me. And, and they had made this wonderful tooth for it. And when they did it, I didn't realize that the tooth that they had made for me was out of Persian gold. And it was a beautiful tooth, and it was beautifully made, and it was installed in my mouth. And then I had to be put on opium for them to do that. And then they gave me opium, like today, hey, you want some more Vicodin? Here, Well, in Istanbul it was opium. So now I'm on opium with a gold tooth, and I decide, don't ask me why, but I think, you know what, I'm going to a brothel. I'm feeling dangerous. I'm going to a brothel. So I find out what the deal is, and they connect me with this cab driver, And he goes, Taksim, and, and turns off the lights and takes me up back alleys up the hills because they don't want you to know where they've taken you. And so finally, I'm there, and I'm taken, and I go up the elevators and everything, and the doors open. And I was raised, again, by a flaming feminist who was raised by a suffragette. And Mother said that really prostitution should be legal, that women should be protected, it should be legal, that, women should be in control, and blah, blah, blah. So, I wasn't going to, go in someplace where they're in chains and that kind of thing. They opened the door, and the minute the door opened, I realized this place is run by women. There were men and women there, but you could just tell. And so they brought all the women out, and they all pose and everything like that. And I said, I want a woman that speaks English because, So I figured out the woman, and she was lovely. And I went to the room with her, and nothing happened. I just wanted to talk. I just want to know what it's like to go to a brothel. Doesn't everybody? And so I'm in this brothel. And, and there's my goat tooth, and I'm still on opium. And I'm starting to think I can speak Turkish here. But she said to me, I loved her. She was so nice. And she said, you're so handsome and everything. Why don't more of the guys like you come here? And I said, well, they don't really know where it is and everything. And we started talking, and I said, really, honestly, And she said, well, really. So I said, well, I'm at the youth hostel, and I'm sure there's a lot of guys there that would really love to come here and everything. So she brought in some people and everything, and we started talking, men and women. We started talking. And before it was over, I'd swung a deal that they were going to pay me if I brought people to them. And I thought, this is great. So I went back to the youth hostel, and I started negotiating. And it was only that I would take only one a night, and sometimes two, but really one a night. And I would take them, and always I'd make sure that the women were, that everybody was very respectful of the women, and everybody was happy. So the guys at the youth hostel were paying me money to take them, because I'm saying, I'm not taking you to my brothel unless you give me money. And then I'd go to the brothel, and they would give me money. It was wonderful, except then the people at the youth hostel told me that they said that I was running a sex trafficking ring. Well, I understood where they were coming from, but I thought it was a very narrow definition because I felt that I was really just connecting a lot of dots. But in any case, it was getting pretty close to my birthday, and my birthday was coming up, and I really had this dream to get to Athens and sleep in the Parthenon on my birthday. So they gave me a going-away party at the brothel. It was really sweet. Everybody loved me there and everything. I'd been thrown out of the youth hostel. They said that I was the antithesis of what they stood for, which I thought, hell, my tooth was knocked out right in front of you here, Picky. It's always picky. So they gave me the thing, and I ended up getting on to Athens. And here's what happens. When I get to Athens, I find out that Athens is in 1973 under a military dictatorship, and it's pretty humorless. And it's also like 38 degrees. And I thought, well, where do I file a grievance? How in the hell can you be in Athens and it's 38 degrees? And I want to sleep up in the Parthenon. So, of course, I went up and I went in the Parthenon during the day, and I scouted it all out and everything, and it was ice cold and everything. So I'm not proud of this. My sister hates this part of the story. I know. See, you're so bad. You're just hungry for the lascivious details. But I made the decision. You know what? I cannot freeze to death in the Parthenon, and unless I'm really have proper bedding, I can't stay there either. And I was walking through the Plaka, and I happened to be passing, and hanging in the street, in front of this thing, was this big fur-pieced, like coyote pieces blanket. And I looked at that thing kind of the way off-duty soldiers would, a chorus line of high-kicking tarts. So I waited, and suddenly, 1, 2, 3, I snatched it and I ran. So I ran as fast as I could. And I rolled it up inside out and hid it and everything so nobody would be able to realize that. And then I retrieved it later. And then I went back and went through the gates then the next day, which was the 19th of April, 1973. And I went through the gates legally. And then when it got dark, they would, make you leave and they would lock up and everything. But I went and hid in the forested area on the Acropolis. And I had all of this hidden. And I waited until the lights went out and it was very dark. And then right about 10 minutes till midnight, when it would become my birthday, and the lights had gone out completely, I walked up, and they didn't have the scaffolding then yet. It was shortly thereafter, and I walked up, and I made my bed in the Parthenon and lay there and woke up the morning of my 28th birthday beneath a fur blanket in the Parthenon. Yes. Now, my visa was getting to where, you have a 6-month visa, and it was getting a little thin. I went to Crete and lived in a cave facing Egypt for a while, and so forth and so on, more details. And everybody says, oh, a cave, my God, and it was sandy floored, open, had a beachfront view. I don't know, it's up high looking toward Egypt. I don't know why everybody thinks it's so strange you lived in a cave, but it was time to go home. So I decided that I hitchhiked to Yugoslavia, and then I had to take the train through Yugoslavia because that was an Iron Curtain country at the time, communist country, and, blah, blah, blah. So I did that, and then in Trieste, right there in Italy, I hitchhiked on to Paris. When I got to Paris, I had $7. And I still needed to get to Amsterdam, and I still, of course, needed to stow away on a plane, but I'd gotten to where I'd figured out how to do that, If one thing didn't work, another did. By now, I had even enhanced skills since I'd been a double agent pimp. So, and a gold tooth. So, I started sleeping in the park, and then at night, I would play Under the Bridge. Under the Bridge at night, I would play. And they gave me money. And sometimes they gave me even more, but that's a whole other show. So I made it back to Istanbul. And when I got, not to Istanbul, to Amsterdam. And when I got to Amsterdam, I realized I'm saying goodbye. I saw, by the way, it was the Watergate thing by then, and I'd been gone for 6 months, and I could see all these pictures of John Mitchell and all this, and I was really eager to find out what was going on back home with all the politics and so forth and so on, because after all, that was a very important part of what had made the San Francisco years. So at that point, I wrote this in my journal. And this is actually taken from the letter I wrote to my father, but that I reproduced in the thing. It said, years later, if I hadn't gone to Europe the first time no later than this, at the tail end of this period of my late youth, I'd have thought about it, dwelled on it, and belabored rationalizing it away every time I had a drink or wanted one.